I really like Dan Lanning. I keep liking him more and more. So, my guy Jared Mack of the Odds and Audibles podcast 24/7, friend of the show, an Oregon baseball savant, asks a question earlier this week in Dan Lanning's press conference about what it means to have Oregon ranked number one, which hasn't happened in a very long time. And Dan looks at him, smiles, and goes, "Who cares?" And I was like, oh, you didn't have to do my guy dirty like that. But I love that mindset, frankly. Doesn't mean anything. It's got to mean something to him, but it clearly doesn't mean very much because he was right to it. There was no, there's no dance. There was no word salad in there. It was just, who cares? He doesn't care. He's got one goal in mind, and we all know what that goal is, and he's incredibly capable of achieving it. If you want a question answered here on the show, YouTube comments, X formerly known as Twitter, or you can get priority access and a bunch of other perks if you become a Locked On Ducks insider. Link in the description below. You can get a free 14-day trial. Then it's just $5 a month. Brandon asks, "Hey Spencer, question for the podcast. At this point in the season, what would you consider the strength of this team, offense or defense? I think we're starting to see a shift in identity compared to the last 2 years under Nix. Doesn't seem like we're trying to outscore people anymore in the same fashion." Well, they are trying to score more points than the other team. "And for the love of the football gods, Dan, take the points. Your defense is good enough this year." So I think that Dan Lanning came to Oregon, and I had higher expectations for that first year on the defensive side of the ball. And I was kind of disappointed. And then in the second year, there was a jump, and it was sizable. And you went, oh, okay, he's starting to bring in the guys he feels like he needs to run this system effectively. This is going well. And now here we are in year 3, and despite losing the late Kyrie Jackson, RIP forever and always, my man, Brandon Dorlus, who's an NFL draft pick, and several other starters, the defense is better. And that's a good thing to see, because when you bring in a head coach, he brings an area of specificity that he was known for at his previous stop. For Dan Lanning, that was being a defensive coordinator. For Mario Cristobal, it was being an offensive line coach. For Chip Kelly, it was being an offensive coordinator. When you install somebody like that into the head coaching position, rather quickly, you would like to see them get that area right. So you know it wasn't a fluke, there wasn't another assistant somewhere, or they weren't just riding the wave of the system at the previous place. Like the area that guy was in charge of, he is indeed very good. And Dan Lanning is clearly really good. And I'm going to talk about Tosh Lupoi here in just a second. But I think the identity of this Oregon team does start on the defensive side of the ball, which is not to say I don't like the offense, because when you score at least 30 points in every game, boy, you're going to give yourself a chance to win every single football game. But there has been a shift, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just when your head coach has that background, you're going to take on the identity of that guy eventually, and you want to see that. And by the way, the Mario Cristobal teams did that. What was the biggest strength of that team? The offensive line. They recruited that position well. They played incredibly well, and it was essential to Oregon having success. That O-line was really, really good. And this defense for Dan Lanning and company is really, really good. And I remember when, the staff was first assembled back in 2022, and Tosh Lupoi was the defensive coordinator, there were questions because he hadn't been a defensive coordinator in a while. And the last time he had been, Nick Saban said, "I don't want you to be the play caller anymore during the season." That's not a ringing endorsement. Tosh Lupoi deserves a lot of credit. They've been showing him a lot on the broadcast, and he and co-DC Chris Hampton, it's a collaborative effort, and Dan Lanning's involved as well. But Tosh Lupoi is the head defensive coordinator, and those guys are putting together one heck of a defensive season here. Just pitched the first shutout Oregon football has had defensively since 2012. So I think there's a 55-45 lean because of how Dylan Gabriel's playing right now towards the defense. And in a year or two's time, that could be 60-40. I mean, next year, you're looking at the prospect of starting Dante Moore or Austin Novosad. Defense is going to have to be great. And I thought the defense had to take a step forward this year for Oregon to reach its full potential, because I don't think Dylan Gabriel can carry the way that Bo Nix did. And Dylan Gabriel is playing exceptionally well. But the defense has taken a step forward, and that's just maximizing the way that this team is capable of playing. And I think that's a really good thing to see. So, yeah, I think there's an edge identity-wise on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that is Dan Lanning's vision coming to reality. I almost said fruition, and that was just going to be a bad rhyme, and I wasn't about it. But when you look at where Dan Lanning was last at Georgia, you watch them and think, oh yeah, they're a defensively led team, but the offense is really good too. And they've got a great quarterback, and they've got explosive playmakers, and Oregon has that. So that's what he has seen. That's what he knows. That's what he's been working to build. And boy, that plan seems to be coming to fruition right now. And it's a really good thing. Krondianic asks, I have a mailbox question. Not mailbag, mailbox. I would give out my mailing address, but that would be, let's just say, unwise given the number of people that listen to and watch this show. Will you finally admit that moving to a 12-team playoff was the correct move for college football? It has made the season more exciting, hands down, with so many teams vying for a playoff spot and seeding. It was about time for college football to enter the 21st century with real postseason format, just like every other major team sport. I'm going to answer the next question that I got, which is a shorter response, and I'll end with that one. The next question was, how well will Oregon fans travel the rest of this year? You tell me, but I know of a lot of people that are going to try and get to that Michigan game. Michigan, Wisconsin, those are legit road games. I hope Oregon fans travel well. It's great to see them at Purdue. I wasn't there personally, but I saw them on TV. I have no idea how they're going to travel. That's up to all of you out there. You have the ability to go to Oregon games every week. I hope to get to another one at some point this season. We'll just have to wait and see. And I'll keep you all updated as always. But back to the question about the 12-team playoff. No, I have not shifted my position. Spencer, you're just being stubborn. Spencer, you're just being annoying and doubling down on this. I have had the same take on the college football playoff. You can go back and listen to my remarks at the time. I'm going to say them again right here. I do not deny the 12-team playoff has good components and things I will enjoy. Home campus playoff games. Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I can make the argument they should have been doing that in the 4-team playoff. The home team or a higher seed gets the home playoff game, and then it's a neutral site for the national championship to be played at the Rose Bowl every year, the greatest venue in all of college football. That sounds like a pretty good system to me. I'd be on board with that. I'd still go back to it. But there are good things about it from a viewership standpoint, and there are great things about it for Oregon. Their access to the play. You know what Oregon is on FanDuel to make the college football playoff right now? Minus 3,500. They wouldn't be that big of a favorite. That's, for those that don't understand gambling odds, that means you'd have to bet $3,500 to win 100. Yeah. So they got a good chance to get in. It is good for Oregon. There are good things about it. But you will not get me to come off of the position, because I still feel this particular sense that it minimizes key high-profile regular season games. Take Oregon, Ohio State, for instance. Ohio State still controls its own destiny even after losing to Oregon. And it was a huge win for the Ducks. I was shaken after they won. I was incredibly excited. Many of you saw the video of me recording myself as I'm running out to my car. And I still felt all of that. And it was great. But if Oregon had lost, that loss would not have been as crushing as the loss to Washington last year, because Oregon still would have controlled their own fate to get in the playoff. Alabama has already lost twice. They've lost twice. They can still get into the playoff, and they don't need any help. I still resent that component of college football. In past years, Alabama right now in October would be done as a college football playoff team. Not anymore. And I lament that implication. And we have opened the door for more teams to get in the playoff. Yay, hooray, this team in X, Y, and Z. If you're not pushing to be one of the top 4 teams at the end of the year, I am yet to see a season outside of last year when Georgia missed the playoff where a team that isn't in the top 4 by the end of it is capable of winning a national championship. If you wanted to go to a 16 playoff, fine. I wouldn't have pushed back on that. Is it going to be fun? Yes, there are going to be fun components. But my fundamental disagreement is still there. It is still there. That you could have a team not want to play in a conference championship because it actually hurts their opportunity to make the playoff makes my entire point. They're like, well, why do we want to play this? Actually, we'd rather do it. Yeah, that's never what college football's been all about. So I'm not getting on and like, you asked a question. I'm always going to answer said questions. That's how it works here on the show. That's how the mailbag operates. And I'm a man of my word for that. I'm not yelling at the sky on every show. I'm not lamenting it I'm lamenting it privately every week. Like, that doesn't mean as much as it used to. There are other games that mean more, so that teams can get in the playoff that have no chance of winning a national championship. So, no, I have not changed my opinion on the 12-team playoff. But it's great for Oregon, so at least there is that.